Let me introduce to you Dr. Melinda Lumanta, whose expertise is on organizational communication, development communication, and communication research. And Dr. Melinda Bandalaria, the Dean of Faculty of Information and Communication Studies, and she is in the field of development communication. This is a video course, the third course in the Certification for Child's Rights and Protection Program. The course objectives are to critically analyze the representation of children in media as well as media use by children. Describe the role of the media in promoting child rights. Discuss and illustrate the use of various communication for development models and approaches in child rights protection. And assess and evaluate a child rights advocacy campaign. And plan a community mobilization program for child rights protection. Among the social concerns, we can say that children's rights is one which does not lack media material and to which we are exposed to every day, as they are carried by many traditional media like television. Can we say that such mass media materials have been effective in advancing the advocacy for the protection of and promotion of child rights?
Yes, definitely. These mass media materials that we see or hear almost every day serve some specific purposes, which one may probably notice upon careful analysis of these materials. Some materials are meant to elevate the concern as a social issue. Without these materials, the public may not be even aware that such a concern like child abuse or child labor exists. For many who consider children as blessings, they will probably think that others think and act similarly. Moreover, there are also societies or cultures or groups who take the control over children as their right and privilege.
So, what you are saying here is that these media materials aim at raising the awareness of the general public.
Yes, and awareness can be the start or the first step from which other strategic communication can build upon. And mass communication or mass media and the kind of media materials that we have now have the power to do that. We know or we are aware that there are many societal problems. Some we directly experience, some we only hear about, and some we don't even know. Media has the power to put prominence to social issues and move them up as a social agenda. By becoming aware of the social issue, public opinion can be shaped. Public pressure can mount or move organizations and sectors so that the action that we want them to take can be taken. Media, in a way, takes the first step to give succeeding strategic communication processes higher chances of success.
Probably the most common explanation that we can have here is how commercial products are advertised, such that we consumers will know that such products exist.
Yeah, you're right. The only difference is that in commercial advertisements, there's only one action that they want us to do, and that is for us to purchase the product. As such, by itself, it is already a strategic communication meant for specific audience to do a specific action and based on research. For materials which tackle the plight of the children, we can draw many information that will guide us, and if called upon, we can perform such action. UNICEF, for instance, we are all familiar take the stance of rights-based approach. Hence, the media promotes the rights of the children. That's what we are all hearing about. Here in the Philippines, for instance, we are familiar with those advertisements which says, karapatang maglaro, karapatang mabuhay ng walang takot, karapatang mag-aral, and so on. If we now see children on the streets begging for a living, most likely our first thought would be they should be in school studying. Yes. There are also media materials that tell us that there are help desks if we see or encounter children who are victims of abuses. So these are those materials that we see every day. We see, we hear, we often encounter every day.
Yeah, you mentioned advocacy, strategic communication, and behavior change. How are all these related?
To me, effective advocacy towards behavioral change boils down to developing a strategic communication approach. As mentioned earlier, the examples cited earlier by Mel, I think concretize what we mean by these terms. Let's start with advocacy. There are many definitions of advocacy. A comprehensive one is one that has been formulated by UNICEF, and I would like to cite it. It has been defined as a continuous and adaptive process of gathering, organizing, and formulating information into argument to be communicated to decision makers through various interpersonal and media channels, with a view to influencing their decision towards raising resources for political and social leadership acceptance and commitment for a development program, and thereby preparing a society for acceptance. Simply, it is applying communication processes and channels or media towards influencing decisions that will lead to acceptance by concerned stakeholders.
Yeah, and I also want to emphasize that we should not stop at raising awareness. Although this is a very important first step, strategic communication can now take on specific purposes like advocacy for policymakers to pass laws which will protect children or uphold their rights. One example is on child labor. Those of us who are fond of watching teleseries, you can probably notice that at the end of the program, there is this disclaimer which says that this program does not violate any provision of the Department of Labor and Employment which concerns children and child labor. Policies and laws provide the political will and the corresponding punishment for its violation. If child rights protection has become a major social concern as a result of the many media materials, the general public has become aware of it. And it will then put pressure for the legislation of laws favorable to it. Of course, we are also aware that the laws reinforce behavioral change. If the media materials promote child rights and if the media materials increase the public's awareness, then such rights are protected. Then the desired behavior will be taken by many individuals and they will sustain that change in behavior. Moreover, a violation of laws can be reported to the concerned authority. But one, like for instance, if there is no such law for child abuse, for instance, or for child labor, then nobody can meddle if one sees something or somebody doing that. But they can probably just say that it is a family matter and you don't meddle if I am abusing my children.
You mentioned behavior change in the example you cited.
Yeah.
Communication related to behavior change addresses knowledge, attitudes, and practices of various stakeholders. It is a research-based and consultative process as it involves analyzing the KAP of stakeholders with the end in view of developing messages that motivate, which in turn is expected to lead to appropriate behavioral change. Note that behavior change is a desired outcome of strategic communication.
Yes, and we also have to take note that for social change to happen, society has to change. Meaning, it should be many individuals adopting the desired behavior that we want them to see after the communication process.
So, in effect,
Uh-huh.
you are saying media can help in two things.
Yeah.
One, advocacy work to
Yes.
protect child rights.
Yes.
And second, behavioral change.
Yes, and I would also like to add that to the two that you have just mentioned, resource mobilization. Because you see, if one is championing a cause, then resources have to be made available. Yeah, by resources, I just don't mean money or
Not just
financial.
money,
Yeah,
yes.
it's not just money. So it can be other resources like media organizations giving space or airtime for the materials, which can help promote the rights of these children and protect these rights. It can also move organizations to provide manpower that will address specific concerns of child rights, like training the police officers and other law enforcers on how to handle children who may be victims of abuses or involved in crimes. Or even recreational areas, these playgrounds, the Enchanted Kingdom, for instance, like
Yeah,
providing free entrances to these children so that they can also enjoy these facilities just like any ordinary children. We also have to take note that these communication materials have to be designed for specific purposes and for specific audiences. So like, for instance, if we are talking of advocacy, we mentioned strategic communication. So if we are talking of advocacy and we are targeting the policymakers, then we have to design the communication materials for them. Specifically for them. This sector may require a printed material, citing statistics, and not specific cases, or may even be, they may even appreciate related information like what other countries are doing or what laws had been passed in these countries. We have to consider our audience when we design our communication materials.
I agree. The government, through policymakers, is among the strategic alliances that we have to forge.
Yeah.
But it is just as important that the community be involved by tapping civil society organizations, business sector, or even religious organizations. The media, as we have already mentioned, is a key sector as well.
Yeah, and in the same manner, if we want to promote behavior change among mothers or fathers or any family member, then each group may necessitate different communication strategy. They may require specific cases, emotional appeal for mothers, for instance, may even prove to be more effective. And the traditional media like radio and television may be the channels of communication. Even the time of airing will have to be considered if we want to reach this specific audience.
In fact, for a successful communication strategy, it is good to keep in mind at least 5 questions. Which audiences need to be reached? What do we want people who hear our message to do? In other words, action. What action do we want them to take? What messages would be appropriate? And of course, which channels of communication would be most effective? And finally, maybe, how will the communication process be monitored and evaluated?
Yeah, that's good. And I can see that it is a very involved process. From situational analysis to monitoring and evaluation, you know, from a communication point of view, message creation and use of media mix seem to be of paramount concern. Yeah.
That is true. In creating the message, we want to keep in mind that it is what the target audience hears, or what is termed as the takeaway message. To be effective, the communicator has to know who the primary and or secondary audience audiences are and what their specific roles are in relation to the specific development campaign or program. It is best to conduct audience or stakeholder analysis prior to message development and delivery.
On the topic of developing the message, and if you are to assess the kind of media materials that we have now, what do you think is lacking on how else can we improve on them so we can accomplish more using the power of media?
Well, for me, my own assessment is that I think we already have enough materials for us to be aware of what is happening, yes. But we now see media materials more of having the call for action. What do we want them to do? As you have mentioned, what do we really want them to do? Or how an individual can act on the messages or the social concern that we have raised. I think we are all familiar with the Bantay Bata program of ABS-CBN. This is not just an awareness campaign, but one which calls for action that we donate a small amount to the program. The desired action is supported by other mechanisms, like for instance, so there is this call for action, but there are other mechanisms like making available the donation cans in public places like the fast foods, the department stores.
Yeah, supermarkets.
Yes, and the amount that is being requested for each individual is not that big. So it is very easy for somebody to respond to the call of action that is being given from these multimedia materials. Even the call for action to report to authorities if one is witnessing child abuses or any violation of laws concerning children is another example. So like for instance, we can see report, call this number if we see child being abused. Yes, so it's very easy for us to give the desired behavior from us. So I think that is what we need to see more from the materials that we have now. More specific call for action.
What do you think of this, Mandy?
Yes, in fact, that is another important step prior to message development in strategic communication. Specifying the desired action you would like your segmented audience to take. The desired action should specify specifically the action, context, time, and the target of action. One may use the following guide questions to specify the desired action. Step 1, what is the issue at hand? Then maybe you can ask the question, what are the responsibilities of various stakeholders? A third step is to ask the question, is there a need to segment the target audience? And if so, how do we create a segment of several audiences? Then this could be followed by a question on what do we want them to do? And finally, what are the benefits to the stakeholders and what barriers do we have to address?
You know, I can see why it is important to do audience analysis and to specifically state the desired action as these provide the focus of the message to be developed or created. You know, let's go back to the takeaway message you mentioned earlier. What would constitute a good message?
A good message. Well, a good takeaway message focuses on the people's needs and must provide a response to the target audience's question of what is in this for me? That is why a good research on the target's knowledge and belief systems, articulated needs, and even biases is needed, which is done through audience analysis. So there's a need to give careful attention to the content of the message.
And may I also add that we also have to talk about the effective messages and how can they be formulated. the way it is packaged and delivered is just as crucial. So we have the message, the way we package the message, and how we deliver these messages is very crucial for us. So consider, for instance, what words to use or not to use. Who will deliver? Who will be the source of the message? And how will these messages be delivered? Even the timing and the place of delivery will greatly affect the impact of the message, and for them to be able to really take away these messages.
Yeah, what you're referring to here is the appropriate use of media in delivering the message. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, and if I may add, we have to remember that for each target audience, we should consider communication channels that are suited for them, accessible and effective. It could range, as we know, from print, face-to-face meetings, radio, television, theater, even technology-mediated media. And in some situations, an appropriate mix of these media may be called for.
Correct. It is clear that communicating for child rights protection and promotion should really harness the power of mass media, or that we should make use of multimedia materials to achieve the different objectives which will contribute towards the goal. As advocates of child rights protection and promotion, we should be communication experts as well in terms of developing effective communication strategy mix and in developing and designing effective multimedia materials like this.
Wonderful.